Hey guys, in today's tutorial I am going to show you how to use Blender and Substance Painter and just how to set up your models in Blender and export them into Substance Painter and just show you the basics of how to bake um, high detail models into low detail models for stuff like game engines and stuff like that. So let's begin. I'm going to start off by just creating a new file. Um, and the first thing I want to do is introduce the difference between high poly and low poly. So if I were to add a cube here and move it up and then apply everything. Uh, so once we have this basic cube, I'm gonna have my settings in the bottom right here. As you can see, it shows you how many vertices there are, how many faces, and how many triangles. We currently have 12 triangles. I'm going to show you guys why it's important to bake high poly into low poly with a normal map. Um, so as you guys may know, um, game engines or games in general need to be optimized so that people have a good experience playing 3D games. Um, this method has been done since 3D games basically originated, or technically since 3D, technically since normal maps has been invented um, around the 90s or something like that. Um, but yeah, normal maps are a really good way to add more details into a single low poly object. Let me show you what I mean. As you can see here, I have 12 triangles for this, and a better way to show you the triangles would be adding a triangulate modifier and then going to wireframe. As you can see, here are the triangles. Game engines use triangles to render 3D objects, and they don't use faces or vertices. They pretty much count the triangles that are in your meshes. So that's pretty much what we keep our eyes on when creating models for game engines. Right. So to start off, I'm going to have this here and duplicate it by Shift D, and we have two objects in the same place. I'm going to name this one low and this one high, and the high one, we're going to run a bevel on it, something like this. I could hide. Let me hide the low poly version first, and yeah, let me add a bevel, someone like this, so that's not too crazy, but it's not unrealistic, right? And as you can see now, I run a bevel with 3 segments, and now I have 188 triangles, which is pretty good. But this wouldn't really matter. You wouldn't technically have to make a high poly and a low poly for this um, low triangles. This is considered this as it is right now. This cube with 180 triangles is still considered low poly. So yeah, don't ever do this if you're just doing it for a cube. But this is just an example to show you guys, like, kind of try to imagine this as like a model that has thousands of triangles, and when you're trying to bake it into a smaller triangle, it's a smaller object that has less triangles. Okay, so yeah, if we go to the wireframe, if you go to wireframe mode, you can see all the triangles that have been made, right? And one more thing, let's go to face mode and let's insert its face, let's insert all of them actually. I'm repeating the process by doing Shift R, and yeah, let's select all these faces, and then Alt E for the extrude menu, and then we're gonna extrude along faces, and we're gonna do it inside like that. Looks pretty good. Um, and yeah, now what we can do from here is go back to the, well, now we added more and more we added more geometry and more triangles to the mesh, so now it has 1084 triangles, and as you can see, more triangles now. So after this, you want to, well, you can hide it. Let's hide the high poly, and the low poly we need to UV unwrap this in order for this whole process to work. So we go to the UV editor tab and shift to go into object mode. I like to do this. It's not completely necessary, but I like to do this sometimes because I personally like to UV unwrap manually. I know some people like to use the smart UV project, but I don't know. Sometimes it makes some seams that are hard to fix, like it will add a seam where it's visible, and I just don't like that. I like to manually do things. It's slower, but sometimes it's more useful. But yeah, here in the overlay, we can add stretching so that we can see what UVs need to be fixed. If they're blue, that technically means that they're good and you don't need to fix them. But if they're red, that means they're being stretched out and you need to fix that. So the way I'm gonna UV unwrap this is by picking the bottom part and adding seams there. You can add seams by pressing 2 and going, or just going here and using the edge select, and whichever edge you picked, you right click on your mouse and you put mark seam. I have a shortcut on for number 4 because I do this a lot and I really don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I'm gonna add a seam here. Also, another trick that is pretty useful is if you if you press U for the UV mapping menu and you click live unwrap, it will, you don't really have to UV unwrap all the time, unwrap like that. And you can see here are some of the errors that I was talking about. It's green, which is pretty bad. You should fix it. You should always have it this blue or this blue, but never green or red or orange. And anyways, you don't really always have to do that like that. If you have this selected, if you have this selected every time you add a new scene, it will fix itself. And if you always want to see it in the UV image right here, you can click this little arrows that go into the sides so that you can see it now. And as you can see, it looks a bit better. So yeah, still a little bit of stretching, so I'm gonna add one more here and one more here. And yeah, this is pretty much UV unwrapped. After this, we can export our model. Going to export this and go to models, and here I'm going to name this high for the high poly, and just put select objects only so that you only export one object, and then export. And we're gonna do the same thing with this one. We don't have to UV unwrap this one. Well, my mistake. I missed a step on material. We have to create a material. Let's name it box, because we need a material in order to send it to Substance Painter. So yeah, and also for the ID map in Blender, you really don't do vertex coloring. You mostly, because it's not available. But what I like to do, it's sort of like vertex painting, but not really. Game Engine just won't pick it up. but Substance Paint just pick it up. It's almost like texture painting or something. But yeah, let's do this by going here and drop menu and going to Vertex Paint, and we click on the face select, and we select all the faces, and then Shift K. We have to select the color, Shift K, and now the whole model is red. This is good so that we can add, if you want to add a specific mask or textures or colors into um, different sides of the faces and Substance Painter, we can do that. Instead of creating multiple materials for a single object and assigning them, you can do this. I'm not really gonna go in depth on this. I'll make it a separate video if you guys are interested. But yeah, let me know. Anyways, we only need to do this for the low poly, I believe. So yeah, we're pretty much done after we added material, and then we quote unquote vertex paint the model. So now we can export it again, and we can export this as low. Remember to select the object. This is the low model, and here we should be able to apply a modifier. Everything that we did, we should apply it just to make sure everything's working. And for this, it's not technically necessary for you to unwrap it, but we could unwrap it. So we're just going to Smart Project, and something like that should be fine. We could Smart Project, and let's add a seam of something like 0.9. That should be pretty fine. And as you can see, everything seems fine. But this doesn't really matter. We don't technically have to unwrap it. But yeah, we might get an error if we don't. So yeah, let's move on. Let's add the material, box material, and yeah, let's export as the high and select objects only, and then we can move on to Substance Painter. Alright, so after Substance Painter has opened, we click on new or just Control N. I like to use DirectX for the normal format, but you could use OpenGL. The document resolution, I like to put it at 2K, but for this example, we're going for 4K. And let's use PVR. There are some examples here for Unity and Unreal Engine like that, but I recently been enjoying just using a PVR, and then inside the game and just going for a PVR material instead of doing like a map like on Unity. I prefer the PVR method. Here, if we were to bake the normals in Blender, we could have added the image here, but I'm currently in the beta of Blender, and Blender usually takes longer to bake normals than Substance Painter, so I rather do it here in the software itself. But yeah, if you guys want a tutorial also on how to bake normal maps on Blender, let me know. I'll go back to the previous versions and do a full tutorial on it. So here we select the object that we're going to use, which is the low poly mesh, 4K for the resolution, and then for the normal format, DirectX, and we press OK. The object is going to be here, and before you start dragging materials into here, we need to do something else. We need to bake the normals. So here we go and edit, bake mesh maps, and the resolution you can change it to whichever you desire. The higher you go, the more longer it'll take, and the more your PC might explode. But since this is a simple object, we can go to 4K. The normals, here we're going to add the high poly so that it bakes it into the normal maps. And then for world space, for the ID, we're not going to use material color, we're going to use vertex color. So make sure to change that, or else you get an error, or the ID just won't bake at all. ambient occlusion. We don't really touch any of this, and after that we just bake here and wait for it to bake. It might take a while. And as you can see, we actually got one error on the ID. I'm gonna open the log, see what it's up. Um, yeah, we didn't do the vertex colors for the high poly model in Blender, but that's okay. And as you can see, here is the low poly and the high poly baked into each other. Um, we don't get fully details on it, like the big holes, the extrusion that we did in here. Well, we get some of it, and that's what matters. Um, remember that this box only has 12 triangles, and the high poly had 1084. So we baked around 1,000 and something uh, triangles into a low poly object, which is pretty good. And from here, we can just, you know, create a new. If you want, you can drag this basic color, these colors right here, this materials. I mean, Substance Painter has a lot of materials in here that you can use. But yeah, we can go ahead and just create a new fill layer right here and add the color something like whitish, or yeah, let's do some sort of material that we could get on Blender so that it looks familiar. For the height, we leave it normal. For the metal, we put it to 1, and roughness, we lower it so it looks kind of like steel, right? And since we baked that ID map into the low poly object, as you can see here, we can add a mask that says add mask with color selection. And if we were to pick a color, if we actually baked the materials properly, we would have gotten a color here, but we didn't, so we can't use that. But that's pretty much how you use that. If you wanted to add different colors into your object, you could have done that way. But let's try to move on. Let's just add a basic steel material that's already in here. We add it here. Wait for it to load, and we go into the settings, and let's lower down the color by a lot. So something like this. And as you can see, it looks pretty good. We're not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna do much on this, just to show you the basics of how to bake normal maps into Substance Painter and back into Blender. So after this, we just export it. You go to here on File and Export Textures, and we're going to export it as a material roughness. We click here to select your output. Make sure to change this, or you're always gonna get it. It's gonna be hard for you to find it because it's gonna go all the way deep into the Windows files. Here you can select the different types of formats that you want the image to be. You can leave it at PNG, but just make sure to put it to 16 bits so that you get a better result. And in the output template here, you could check the different settings. You can create your own presets and update them. We're here from this setting right here. You're gonna get a height detail map, which I don't use most of the time, but I created my own PVR template, which has the roughness, base material, emission, normal, and the roughness, because that's pretty much everything that I use. I don't use anything else. So, but yeah, for this tutorial, we're just gonna use it with the basic template that the Substance Painter software has. So we're going to click on this button to export them, and let's just wait a while. They're 4K textures, so they have to take a while. And here you can press this buttons to open up the output. And as you can see, we have the base, texture, the height, which we're not going to use because we don't have any height information, so it's kind of blanked. This is the metallic. This is the metallic, and this is the normal. and then the roughness. Um, so yeah, let's minimize that. Let's minimize Substance Painter, and let's go back to Blender. And here we have the high poly. We can hide that and open up the low poly. We go to the shading tab here, and if you guys are wondering how I got this background, just go here in this little drop down, and here you can select the different HDRIs that you can use. I like to use this one. It's called Studio something, I believe. I don't know. Um, and yeah, here is the material output, the PVR material. And if you have a add-on activated here, which is called node something add-ons, let's wait for it to load, and it's called node something, node wrangler. And if we select that, you have this feature in which if you hold it and press Control Shift T, it will bring up a menu where you can import your textures. I have my textures in the texture folder, and you click and shift click to this. It will select all of them. You click on import them, and it will automatically set up all your textures here. Let's wait for a bit for it to load. And here are all the textures, so you can see they're properly loaded. The displacement, the normal map, the roughness map, the metallic, and the base color, along with some mapping settings here if you want to scale it, rotate it, yeah, pretty good. And as you can see, here is the final product, which is crazy. Like, whoever created the normal maps, like, he must have been smoking something to create something this crazy. Just it's crazy. This object only has 12 triangles, and you have so much detail, so much bevel detail, the whole detail. This is the full high poly. The material is not gonna look good because the UVs are different than our low poly object. So yeah, that's why it looks pretty nasty. But yeah, we baked this information from 1,084 triangles into just 12, which is crazy to me. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed watching this tutorial, let me know. To render this out, and what's good about PVR textures is that you can render anything and then in Blender and then send it to a game engine, and those same textures will still work. But if I were to use a specific sort of textures from a template for Unity or Unreal Engine, I wouldn't be able to use the same textures on Blender. It just wouldn't work properly because it has different settings. So by using the default PVR material textures, you can use them anywhere. You can even go from Unreal to Unity and have the same textures work like that. We just add a camera here, and we could render this out just like that. Here we add a plane, we scale this up, we add a material on this. Well, let's go back to the material view. Let's go back to material view and then go here in the material, create a material, and just lower down the color. Let's make it a full metal object, and the roughness, let's increase it, let's lower it a bit so that it looks like a metal. Let's lower down the color a bit, scale it even more. Let's extrude the back part and then bevel it so that it looks nice. Let's add about, I don't know, a few, and then shade smooth it, and then let's add a camera. Control Alt 0 so that we can put the camera like this, and it takes on our viewpoint. And then after that, we just render image with F12, and it's gonna take a bit depending on what GPU you have, or if you have a CPU. Uh, I don't know. Go have a full meal because that bad boy is gonna take a while to render. And there, as you can see, the render has actually finished, and it looks pretty good for, I don't know, a simple six face box or a 12 triangle box. So if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know what kind of other things you want in the comment section below. I could do how to make game assets, how to optimize for game engines, more in depth on how to use Substance Painter to make textures, um, how to UV unwrap properly. So yeah, just let me know, and I will be back with another video. Thanks for sticking by. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you didn't, uh, subscribe. And yeah, bye.